welcome back to All Things Jeerah, and I'm back with another story. This story is about Lake Shawnee Amusement Park. Lake Shawnee Amusement Park is apparently abandoned and supposedly haunted. Lake Shawnee is located in Mercer County, West Virginia. Now, the initial history of Lake Shawnee starts back in the 1700s, and Michael Clay was one of the first white settlers in the area. There were already Native Americans living in the area, and Michael Clay was one of the first white settlers to move there. Michael Clay and his wife settled on an 800-acre farm and had 14 children there. There were a lot of issues in the area because the Native Americans lived on that land first, and they also used that land to hunt with. So as these white settlers were moving in and moving their families in and developing properties, they were driving away the wildlife in the area. So now the Native Americans are losing their home, and they're also losing their food source. So Michael Clay went out to hunt one day, and he left his wife and children at home. While he was gone, the Native Americans attacked his land, and they killed 2 of his children. And they kidnapped another and took him with them. Now, Michael Clay's wife saw all of this happening from the house. She saw the 2 children be killed, and she saw them take her other child with them. She had 11 other children in the home, so she hid in the home with those children, expecting the Native Americans to come into the home and take them as well. So she waited for a while. When she realized that they weren't coming back, she got all her other children together and they ran. They ran several miles to a relative's house. So while Michael Clay was out hunting, he comes back home, and on his way back in, they tell him about the attack, that 2 of his children have been killed, and they didn't know where the rest of his family was. So he assumed that the Native Americans had either killed the rest of the family as well or took everyone else with them. So he got a group of men together, and they went out to search and track these Native Americans, trying to get his family back. When they finally caught up to the group, Michael Clay found that only 1 child had been kidnapped and taken along with the Native Americans, and they had burned him at the stake. The chief allowed Michael Clay to take the remains of his child home, and they buried all 3 children on their land. Now, again, that was back in the 1700s. I couldn't find too much more information on the property up until the 1920s. In the 1920s, a man named Conley Sidlow purchased the property with the goal of putting a small amusement park on that property. The park had a Ferris wheel, 2 water slides. It had a cement pond used for swimming. Of course, there was the lake. They had a dance hall and a few other facilities on the property. About a month after the park opened, Conley's 3-year-old daughter passed away. I couldn't find a lot of information about her, but I believe she drowned in the bathtub. Like I said, I couldn't find a lot of information about it, but from what I could tell, she drowned in the bathtub about a month after the park was opened. Now, during the life of this amusement park, there were 6 deaths on the property. I could only find specific information about 3 of those deaths. One was a little girl. She died on the swing set. I believe it was an electric swing set. A delivery truck was backing out and backed into the swing set that she was either on or standing near, and she was killed in that accident. Another death was a 9-year-old little boy. Now, his mother dropped him off at the amusement park at about 11 a.m., and he was there to swim. So he went to the cement pond to swim. She came back to pick him up later that evening. A couple reports said about 5 o'clock she came to pick him up, and no one could find him. No one really knew him. He was there alone to swim. So they kind of shut down the park, searched everywhere, and eventually they found him in the bottom of the cement pond. I saw one report that said his arm was stuck in a drain, and another said it was his leg. Either way, he was pulled into a drain at the bottom of the pool, and he drowned there. There was another report of a little boy that drowned in the lake. Now, at the time, the lake was not used for swimming, but another little boy drowned in the lake. I couldn't find too much more information about him either. There were 3 other deaths that I couldn't get specific information on, but in total, 6 people died in the park. The park was closed in 1966, but a lot of the rides and buildings were just left standing, so they eventually rusted and started to fall apart. Some of the rides were sold to other amusement parks around the country, but many of them were just left there to rust. The Ferris wheel is still standing there. In 1985, a former employee named Gaylord White bought the property in hopes to reopen the park. He was hoping that reopening the amusement park would bring more visitors to the area. Because Gaylord had been there back when the park was running in the 60s, because he did work there, he wanted to bring back some of the original rides that were there back then. So he looked around to find a swing set that matched what they had initially, and they found one in New Jersey. So they ordered the swing set. It was brought to Mercer County. When the swing set arrived at the park, they checked the serial numbers and realized this was the exact swing set that was at the park originally. The same swing set that the 9-year-old girl was killed on. So they had the swing set, they added a few more rides, some kiddie rides, and a couple other attractions, and the park opened and ran for about 3 years. So the park was shut down, but they still used the rest of the property to host other events. They wanted to develop another part of the property for mud bogging, so they started to dig. And when they started to dig, they started finding arrowheads and bones and other little artifacts. So they stopped digging and they contacted one of the universities in the area. Some doctors from Marshall University came out and they started to dig in the area. And they realized that this was the site of an ancient Native American burial ground. They started to uncover more artifacts, and they realized that this was partially a burial ground in some areas, and this area had been used as a trading post for the Native Americans, just based on the things that they found. They also found at least 3,000 graves that had the bones of mostly women and children. They concluded that the bones and the artifacts didn't belong to the Shawnee tribe of Native Americans that lived there when Michael Clay settled there, that these were a tribe of prehistoric Native Americans. They were there way before the Shawnee tribe was. They also believed that this tribe was wiped out by some type of flu. When the flu came into the tribe and people started to get sick, they separated the men from the women and children, which is why this area contained mostly the bones of women and children. There were some men there, but mostly women and children. The land is still owned by the whites till this day, and although the park isn't running, the amusement park side is not running. They still host events there. They do a lot of tours there of the property, and they do a lot of Halloween and haunted house events. There's said to be a lot of paranormal activity on the property. There was one specific incident where one of the owners was on the riding lawnmower trying to cut the grass in the area. He said he saw a little girl standing next to the lawnmower. So he stopped the lawnmower, he turned to look at the little girl, and he asked her, "Who are you? What do you want?" And she told him he needed to stop the lawnmower. And he said he was scared. So he stopped the lawnmower and said, "Fine, if you don't want me on it, I'll get off." So he got off the lawnmower and he left it sitting there for days in that same spot. Now they said when they went back to the lawnmower to finally move it to put it back where it belonged, they realized that I believe some of the gas lines were cut and that it could have caught on fire while he was on the lawnmower riding. So maybe she came to warn him about that so he didn't have an accident. There are a lot of reports of people seeing that specific little girl just all over the property, but particularly near that swing set. There's a lot of reports of seeing a man standing on the Ferris wheel. There are surveillance videos showing the buckles in the Ferris wheel opening by themselves. Lots of people on the tour say that as you walk through, especially at night, you can feel other people that brush up next to you and no one's there. You can feel people hold onto your arm and no one's there. There was one woman in particular, she said she felt someone rubbing her arm. People go out to the property quite often and they leave little gifts, especially for the little girl that died on the swing. If you go out there now, you'll see dolls and toys that are out there either on the swings or around the swings, and people are leaving those for the little girl because she's seen there so often. But from what I could tell, they're all different types of spirits that are reported to be there. Most of the camera crews that go out there have issues with their cameras and all their other electronic equipment, and they say that is a sign of paranormal activity. I don't know. TV shows have done a lot of episodes on the property. One in particular was from the Discovery Channel. Now, one of the producers was out there on the property recording, and she went into one of the ticket booths to look around. And when she got in there, she was stuck in the ticket booth. She could not get out. But the doors on the ticket booth didn't have a lock, so they weren't locked. They could not lock, but she could not get out. When they finally got her out, she was so freaked out, they had to take her to the hospital, and she was in the hospital for a few days. Now, because of all these things that happened on the land prior to the amusement park, and especially there being a burial ground there, a lot of people say that the land is cursed. So anything that's on the land will never fully develop or be able to run properly or be successful. Some people say that the deaths from the amusement park are a curse from the burial ground. Some people say that maybe the land has always been cursed and that's why that tribe was wiped out in the first place. So what do you think? Do you think that the land in that area is cursed, or is it just history? You know, no matter where you go, people have died in that spot, no matter where you are. So do you think it's cursed, or do you think this is just normal? If you've had any paranormal experiences at Lake Shawnee or anywhere else, let me know in the comments. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and share it. Until next Wednesday, I'll see you guys later.